Suzanne Saulsberry. Oh. What's going on? All right. Noise pollution. Okay, so I think we're back. Hey, everyone. Kelly Suzanne Saulsberry here. There's a lot of noise with the Air and Water Show. So just bear with us. If we mute momentarily, that might be why. But anyway, welcome to Politics at the Kitchen Table. This is our new show at E3 Radio. Super excited to be hosting the show. This is our first episode. And Politics at the Kitchen Table is an exciting new venture, and I'm very honored to work with Anna Deshawn of E3 Radio and her team on this. And Politics at the Kitchen Table is a podcast that's meant to, where we have like live kitchen table style conversations with Black and Brown candidates and elected officials that amplify LGBTQ candidates of color so they aren't lost amid everyone else running for office or that hold office, humanize elected officials and candidates, especially in a time of cynicism and an environment where, you know, expectations of who our elected officials and candidates are based on narrow assumptions and expectations that inform our perceptions of them. And we also are looking to create an opportunity to talk about issues in a real, relevant, and relatable way. And we want to empower each other, right, to own our power in the political space. So that is our mission at Politics at the Kitchen Table. I want to welcome you. This is our first conversation that in a series of 3 that we'll be having. We'll have 3 conversations total, kind of see how it goes, the vibe, and then maybe we'll continue with it, right? So I'm thrilled today to be in conversation with State Senator Mike Simmons. Mike Simmons is someone I've known for years. And in addition to being just a phenomenal advocate and activist in his own right, he also comes with a wealth of political experience. He has been a deputy policy director or policy director in the office of Mayor Rahm Emanuel. He was also a deputy commissioner at the city of Chicago's planning department. And he was elected, or not, I shouldn't say elected, but the office that he holds now is state senator of Illinois' 7th Senate District. So super excited. He is definitely a groundbreaker, and that he is the first openly LGBTQ elected person in the Illinois Senate. So there are many reasons why he's amazing, and I'm delighted to be in conversation with State Senator Mike Simmons right now. So let's welcome him.
Hi, everybody.
I got a little tongue-tied there. Welcome, Senator Mike.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on today. I'm excited to have some dialogue and reach the community and spark some thought.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. I'm excited that you're here. So just so you know, folks tuning in, Mike and I are going to talk for 20 minutes. And then the last 10 minutes, we would really love to, take your questions and comments or anything like that. So please put them in the chat and we'll do our best, to address them in the last 10 minutes of the conversation. So we'll be here a total of 30 minutes together. And the last 10 minutes will be to you. All right. So Mike, Senator Mike, let's just dive in, okay? Because time is of the essence. One, it is fantastic to see you. I am so proud of all of the work that you have been doing as a state senator. I mean, you have come in just not letting, any kind of dust collect under your feet. You have been introducing legislation, getting it passed. You and your team do a phenomenal job of using social media to engage folks. You're on the ground live in person with them, but then you also use social media to let folks know what you're doing on their behalf. So I just want to first say kudos to you and your very capable team.
Thank you.
And just fantastic. I'm very proud of you. I wish I could vote for you. I wish I lived in your district, but I don't. But I do want to ask you this.
Okay.
What actually inspired you to even run for office for this particular position, and and why that district in particular? Like, what made you want to run for this position, and what area does the 7th Senate district in Illinois cover?
Absolutely. So I was sworn in on February 6th of 2021. So I'm a year and a half into office. This state Senate district covers the Chicago neighborhoods of Uptown, Edgewater, Rogers Park, Lincoln Square, North Center, West Ridge, the southernmost part of Evanston by the Oakton Historic District. And then starting next year, the district will inch a little bit south and pick up a bit of northern Lakeview. So what is special about this district? Well, one, we have one of the highest concentration of LGBTQIA households in the Midwest. So it's fitting that, I'm the first gay person to serve in the Illinois Senate. It's just such a huge honor to be a voice for tens of thousands of people in this district and across the state who are LGBTQ. I'm also the first Black person to serve as a state senator from this district. So that's another big step forward. Almost 17% of this district, the neighborhoods I just listed off, are comprised of Black households. And so what a joy that those households, I get to be a voice for that community and the broader community. And then I'm also, so my mother was Black American and my dad was a refugee from Ethiopia. And so I'm also now the first Ethiopian American to serve in either chamber of the General Assembly. So we broke all kind of ceilings and busted and broke all kind of glass the night I got sworn in, and not just champagne bottles. So it speaks to the question you asked of why I wanted to run for the seat. I grew up here. I grew up in Lincoln Square. I grew up in scatter site public housing. My family was the first Black family to move onto the block. There were all kind of racist epithets and harassment that my family went through a couple years before I was born. That was their welcome to Lincoln Square community. We now see as one that is pretty open and welcoming. 40 years later, right? So my family literally paved the way for that. And then, it just felt to me like my lived experiences in this district, right? With that example, my dad coming over as an asylum seeker from Ethiopia in the early 80s, as a refugee living in a crowded apartment in Edgewater, and then north of Howard and Rogers Park, in a crowded apartment with 6 of his brothers, where, they had no money and they had no ties, right? And so here, a generation later, I'm now the state senator for a district that doesn't just include Ethiopians and Black Americans, but includes people from the Middle East. It includes people from Central and Southern Asia, from Latin America, from every part of Europe, and white people that have lived in this community a long time. And I like to say that I'm a voice for all those people. My mom ran a salon in Rogers Park, and if you saw her clientele, she had people from every part of the world. And so I like to tell people that I don't come from a political family, but in so many ways, I'm carrying on the legacy of my family in a really poetic way.
That is so incredibly moving, Mike. And you really are, I'm at the risk of sounding cliche, you are a man of the people. You are a person of the people. You have such a unabiding love of humanity, and a sense of mission and responsibility to create value in the world and to positively make an impact
Hmm.
in people's lives. You've exuded that and demonstrated that ever since I've known you, and I'm so glad that you are in that district. It reflects just so many different types of human beings. And that reflects your really broad perspective and appreciation for difference, diversity, inclusiveness, voice, and the things that also bring us together across differences. So, but you just have such a compelling personal story. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I'd also like to ask you, what does a state senator even do? Like, what is the primary job description? How is it similar to or different from that of a state representative? I'm just curious. Can you enlighten us?
Absolutely. So it's a good question, right? We often assume that people know, um, what all their elected officials do, and most folks don't. There are some components of this job I didn't even fully know until I got in it and really could see and appreciate the full influence of a state legislator. So here's what the state senator does. Number one, it's a job to write legislation, introduce bills, and sponsor legislation on behalf of the community that you represent. So that's the biggest, most sweeping power is the ability that I have to introduce legislation at any given time that speaks to the needs and interests of all 220,000 people that I represent in my Senate district. Um, in terms of the House of Representatives, the Senate is the upper chamber of state government. So you've got, House of Representatives, you have got the state Senate. The state senator has within his district two House districts. So every senator has got two associated reps that they work with. So in my case, is Greg Harris, who's the House Majority Leader, is also the first person to serve in the General Assembly who is HIV positive and out and proud, and also is openly gay. He was the second openly gay person to serve in the General Assembly. And then my other rep is Kelly Cassidy, who is a lesbian lawmaker. So we have entire total LGBTQ representation at the moment in this district on the far north side of Chicago. And the other powers of the state senator have are more soft powers. So we also have the ability to influence the direction of legislation. We have the ability to build coalitions and state government that include elected officials and advocacy organizations, labor groups. In the case of my district, those that are fighting for the LGBTQ community. We have so many wonderful organizations in this part of the state. And then the other power that's more obscure that I like to mention is that the state Senate has the ability to advise and consent the governor on who he or she or they appoint to lead state agencies. The House does not have that power, as far as I know. So, when the governor wants to appoint persons to, head the Department of Human Services or Prison Review Board or Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, we have a say in it. We vote on whether or not those people get the job. That's a power the senators have that reps actually don't. I don't think influence.
That is thanks for the crash course in that. Like you explained it super well, the hard and the soft power and the core responsibilities. And I didn't know that about being able to advise the governor on key officials who can lead different, agencies or councils. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Super helpful. Now, I want to ask you this. How
Hmm.
has being a person in elected office impacted and or changed you, or has it?
Hmm. I would say that it has not changed me. I mean, I was joking with somebody the other day, an old friend of mine, that I always feel relieved that I know I'm the same person I was before February 6th. I care about the same stuff. I find myself saying the same things. I find myself speaking up on the same issues. And so, as you said in the introduction, I mean, I've been, an activist for a long time. Prior to becoming a state senator, I ran my own firm, Blue Sky Strategies, which specializes in developing anti-racist public policy and anti-racist urban planning when we're talking about issues around gentrification and, issues around, just the inequitable development patterns that we see in cities in Chicago. Even my firm played an outsized role in bringing some of that to light for some of our stakeholders. And then prior to that, when I was at the city, working with you, I was fighting for affordable housing, preservation of affordable housing on the north side of Chicago. fighting to eliminate food deserts in Chicago, fighting for equity for transgender residents across the city. And so, those are all issues that still animate me. And those are the issues that, if you look at I've passed 16 bills in the state Senate since I've been sworn in. So that's about an average of one a month, 16 bills in 18 months. A sweeping legislation covering LGBTQ justice, covering issues around helping survivors of sexual assault, issues pertaining to mental health and youth, issues pertaining to economic parity for home care workers. I mean, we really are, when we talk about diverse representation and justice, right, that is a sweeping agenda. And so, I like to think that I'm the same person now as I was before I took my first step in the state Senate.
And you are. I can just say that you are. Like, you really are the real deal. And one of the things that I really admire about you is that you have not slipped into politician speak since serving as an elected official. So I was telling Anna, and I was saying this to Tracy, I said, the same kind of like candid, straight, no chaser, no bullshit kind of approach, but compassionate, tactful, and thoughtful. So you were those things then, you still are now. There's been no change, but like, there's no kind of like talking in circles with you. You don't give non-answer answers. At least I've never heard you do it. You don't do it on social media. You don't do it in live interviews. You don't, and so I guess, how have you been able to maintain that? Because so many people, even people who are just fantastic at what they do, but it's like they either lose the ability or courage, maybe, to actually speak directly to issues and take calculated risks, and perhaps even some of their own constituents liking them or respecting them or not wanting to vote for them anymore. So how do you maintain that courage and commitment to speaking truth to power, so to speak, speaking thoughtfully and directly about things? How do you do that? And how have you been able to be so incredibly effective legislatively?
Mm-hmm.
Just a number of pieces of legislation that you've introduced and lobbied support for. Like, how do you tap into being able to be effective and communicate directly?
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, I think for me, it's just wired in my DNA. I mean, it's just who I am. When you said that too, I'm just like, I always appreciate when people tell me that I'm not, becoming a person that just talks like a politician, right? I was at an event the other day, and I believe in embracing kind of like, the more awkward sides of like trying to grow into this role. I was at a rally and I was holding a big megaphone, and I literally said out loud, I feel like no elected official would say this. I'd be like, I'm still getting used to this whole politician thing. This megaphone is kind of heavy, so I'm going to hold it like this. And people appreciate that, just that, not always trying to seem perfect. Because why should I try to seem perfect? I'm not. It's actually just easier for me to just let everybody see kind of the human being that's behind the role. And so I like to think that if I keep it real and can keep kind of more of a human face, that people will find me more approachable, which means that I'll hear more, which means I'll be a better lawmaker and a better advocate. And which means that, like, over the course of the first few years in office, I feel like it's been about more than just me. It's about, the tens of thousands of people that I'm representing and fighting for. So, for me, it's just kind of like just who I am, right? It just is about being myself. I like to think the best thing I can do in terms of my political career is just be honest with people, right? And like you said, no chaser, no BS. I'm the first person to serve in the seat. I grew up in public housing. I'm Black. My father was a refugee, political asylum seeker. I am gay, right? Out and proud, right? What benefit is there to me or the communities that I come from to try to sugarcoat and create opportunities for people to misunderstand what I'm saying and what kind of vision is coming from the community? So that's really the justification to just keep it real with folks, right? And like you said, I'm compassionate, I'm kind. I'm not a person that is obnoxious or angry. If you look at my social media, I'm not the type of person that go back and forth and all that. Like, who has time for that? Who has the energy for that? But I'm always call it straight, especially on these issues around systemic racism, these issues around homophobia, LGBTQ phobia, the xenophobia that we're seeing that immigrants are having to deal with, right? I have no time or patience to mince words on any of those issues. We've waited too long for representation for that.
I totally agree. And it's so refreshing. And can you just think of how much more effective folks would be politically if everyone kind of embraced not only that attitude and spirit and being very much grounded like you are in your values, your core values, your principles, and getting things done, not just giving lip service, but actually doing what the heavy lifting, rolling up the sleeves, engaging your constituents, listening, duking it out with folks in a good way. Like our government would be so much more effective. But then that also reflects us, we as voters, and as people who are engaged civically. We also have to create and foster that kind of environment, for more people like you to run. So,
Yep.
there's also a responsibility on our end.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this too, in our kind of like we're winding down here, but there are a couple more questions I'd love to ask you. What are, let's say, 3 fun things about you, or interesting things, or that the public doesn't know, but that you'd like to share? And I ask that question again because politics at the kitchen table is also about, quote unquote, humanizing candidates, elected and appointed officials, in office. Like, we are more than our jobs and our roles, no matter how much we love them and how much they may reflect, our personal values and interests. So, what are 3 things about you that the public doesn't know, but that you'd like to share?
Um, a few different things come to mind. So I don't know why I feel like I should mention this now, but so I wear my hair in freeform dreadlocks, and there's some days where, in my more formal days, I wear them up in an abstract loop that often looks like a heart. Um, and then there are days like this where I just wear them down because that's how I want them. And then there's some days I wear them all the way down. So I just want the folks to know that there's no rhyme or reason to how I wear my hair. I like to say that I wear my hair as an ode and homage to my ancestors, right? Particularly the fact that I have ancestors that have been in America as Black people for 400 years, literally built this country. And then I have ancestors that were on the side of mountains in Ethiopia that never colonized, only African country to never followed colonialism. So my hair is an homage to that ancestry and nothing more. It does not predicate itself on how somebody might react to it in the course of a day. Um, Certainly have no time or interest for what anybody says who, is some sort of microaggressive comment or things like that. So I wanted particularly Black listeners to know that I wear my hair freely, and it's all about me and my ancestors, and it has nothing to do with respectability or where I have to be or any of these other things. And I just, like to throw that out there because people always appreciate knowing that. The other thing I want people to know is that I took Latin and Greek in high school, and it's one of my hobbies
Me
too.
too.
Did too. I didn't know
Yes.
that about you. I've known you for 10 years. I didn't know that.
Yeah. We both went to Ignatius that had the classics.
Yeah, we did. And so I really enjoy classical languages. I still have like little phrases and thoughts that I have that are in Latin from high school. Particularly if I'm journaling or writing, I have like shorthand Latin phrases that I use. And occasionally Greek phrases I can read and write in Greek. And so I think that's cool to know that there's people, particularly elected officials, that have some kind of interest that where there's no political benefit or any kind of contrived reason behind it. It's just something I personally enjoy. I love language. I'm learning Amharic, which is the language of Ethiopia. We have our own alphabet in Ethiopia that also has an ancient version of it called Gez, which is kind of like Latin to modern English and Romance languages. So I love language. And then the other thing is that, I'm very much, I'm passionate about the mundane things that we have in cities. So things like buses. I'm fascinated by buses. I take buses. I rely on public transit. That's a good thing for people to know about me, as I get around by bike, buses and trains, and by foot. And so, I have a special place in my heart for buses, for urban buses. When I was in Montreal a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at all the buses. I told my partner, we have to ride the bus. We have to ride the trains. I need to see, how do they sound? How do they feel? How do they look? What are the signs? Are they canvas? Are they digital? So that's a whole, thing I like to geek out about. And now the whole world knows it.
I love this. I'm like geeking out over here. I'm just like loving it. The Latin and Greek connection. I love it. I love it. As a locked sister myself, although I cheat. I do the crochet needle, so
Oh yeah, no, I
it's
see.
not free form, but they're locks.
They're still popping though.
And also, like I know you're an avid walker and a biker, and one of the things I miss, and then we'll get to the questions from our audience. I'm so happy to see questions. I miss your neighborhood walking tours where Mike, you would just go on walks like in different neighborhoods, like for hours, and you'd have like impromptu conversations with people on the street and mechanics and people in restaurants and parents and all kinds of folks, and you'd post the pictures on your Facebook page and write vignettes, about your experience. And I learned so much about the city vicariously. So I just wanted to say, like, I love your love of Chicago and Illinois. I just love it. Okay.
Thank you, thank you. Deep, deep love for Chicago. Chicago. I'll be a Chicagoan in this life and my life's after this.
Yes, yes. Oh, this is awesome. Okay. So, welcome folks who are chiming in with your questions. And there's some great questions here. Here's the first one, Senator Mike. What legislation are you looking to introduce in the future? Great question.
Excellent question. So, the top issue that I'm thinking about right now is housing affordability. My district is one of the most diverse districts in the state, if not the country. And I often say that the reason we're so diverse, why you can walk through Uptown or Rogers Park or West Ridge and see people from every part of the world, is because we have housing at a variety of price points. And so, I'm talking with some of my progressive colleagues right now about potential bills that we can introduce that will help us to maintain and preserve affordable housing, so that we can continue to call this a diverse community for a long time. It's why the far north side of Chicago is cool, because we have people from all over the world. And so I'm very invested in ensuring that my legacy is one where we have, made this a diverse community for another generation.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Like someone else has a question too. It says, with all of the anti-legislation happening across the country, how do we continue to make Illinois a safe state for LGBTQ folks and women? And to whomever asked that question, thank you for also adding women, because the violence against women, especially Black women and girls, is off the chart. The Black femicide rates in the country are off the chart. So thank you for that question.
Yes, that's an excellent question. There are a few different things we need to do, right? So on the issue of reproductive rights, we now are in a scenario where Illinois is an island of reproductive justice, surrounded by states such as Indiana, where abortion is now effectively illegal. And so we are going to need to, make sure that so first of all, abortion obviously remains legal in Illinois, but we've got to enshrine those protections so that, this is not going to be dependent on who takes control of the legislature in, several terms or years from now, right? So we want to do that. Number two, we want to make sure that we increase capacity at our medical clinics in Illinois that are now seeing an increase in demand for abortion from people that are effectively medical refugees fleeing other states. So empowering physician assistants, midwives, and others that can aid in birth and delivery and abortion, so that we can continue to meet that net need and demand. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we've got to make sure that we beef up protections for gender affirming care. Similar to abortion, we're seeing states now literally prosecute and criminalize parents who've done nothing more than allow their children to obtain gender affirming care. This is absolutely insane that we're seeing this happen in places like Texas and Idaho. So I would be interested in introducing legislation and supporting legislation that would make Illinois a refuge state for parents of transgender youth and transgender folks that no longer feel safe in their home states. And so there are a lot of ways that we can do that. One of the things I'm really advocating for is prohibiting law enforcement in Illinois from cooperating with law enforcement from other states that are trying to prosecute people, right? Simply saying, look, it's like embargoing a rogue state. Like, we're not going to work with you. We're not going to deploy our resources to help you in this hideous pursuit of people that you've decided to prosecute. And then on the issue of black women and femicide, I mean, this is such a big issue that no one talks about.
Nobody talks about it. No one.
This issue that Black women routinely are violated, right? Are violated, are murdered, disappear, people may talk about them disappearing for a couple of days, and then
Right.
it's just not discussed again. And so this is like an epidemic problem.
Yeah.
So I was happy to support legislation that Senator Maddie Hunter introduced last session to look more closely at this, so that we can come up with some systemic responses to the issue, of Black femicide and Black women who are disappearing and are abducted, and oftentimes are just not found. The law enforcement is not putting in the resources to try to investigate what's happened to these women. And these are women that are mothers, sisters, aunts, daughters, girlfriends, partners, and beloved community members. And so we have got to get a hand on that issue as well.
Thank you so much for speaking to that. And I want to say I was using hyperbole when I said nobody's talking about it. To your point, so I'm glad that you and Senator Maddie Hunter are working on it. I also want to give props to other folks who are working on this. I know there's an organization, A Long Walk Home,
Hmm.
founded by sisters Scheherazade and Salamisha Tillett. And they do a lot of work with girls and young Black women, teaching them leadership development and advocating for the health and wellness and the safety of Black girls and women. So, they do a lot of their work through the creative arts, through installations and advocacy, and working with different elected councils and community groups. So I want to give them, props, as well as Black Femicide US, which was started by Rosa Page, who's a behavioral health nurse, health specialist. And several years ago, she started tracking, the murders of Black girls and Black women. She was just one person, but her work is so meticulous that the FBI uses her stats. So I just wanted to definitely elevate folks who are doing the work, and you are one of them, Senator Mike. So thank you.
Absolutely.
And how do we increase the pipeline of Black LGBTQ politicians? That's
Mhm.
another question from the audience. Great question.
It's a phenomenal question. I think that it really does take. I'm a big believer in, like, nobody, nothing for us without us. Nobody's coming to save us. No one is going to ask us to run for office, right? I know that people, and I had been asked to run for office several years ago, but I ironically was asked by people who were not familiar with my work around LGBTQ justice. I would say the Black LGBTQ folks out there, that we are so, like, ridiculously underrepresented in government, at all levels, right? I mean, local levels, city council, state government, U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate, all these different levels have just not seen us. So it's always a good day for Black LGBTQ people, who have the advocacy background and have the record of activism in the community, and have the stomach for this work, to get involved, right? To be candidates, to get behind other Black LGBTQ office holders, because there's so few of us right now. We've got to support one another, and then we have to fight for our issues. So, I oftentimes think of the people out there too who, like, you think of them as running for office, and they're like, oh, no, I never want to run for office. And sometimes those are exactly the people that need to really think about, if not them, then who, right? If you're talking about especially a district that's never had LGBTQ representation, the Black community, right, is in fierce need of more LGBTQ representation, right? We just had our first Black legislator elected, Lamont Robinson, a few years ago, right? But it's lonely up in here, right? Like, it's him in the House, it's me in the Senate. And there's definitely other districts in the state of Illinois that I think would elect a Black LGBTQ person at any level of government.
Brilliant. Thank you. And let me ask you, this will be our closing question, right?
Mhm.
So the primary elections across the city and state were in June, right? And the general election is coming up in November. Now, you being the state senator for Illinois' 7th Senate District, you are running unopposed. What do you say to folks in your district, or maybe in other districts, of folks who are running unopposed, so they doubt, like, the importance of showing up to vote? Think, like, what is the point?
Yeah.
Uh, what would you say to that?
Yeah.
Because obviously, I know you believe very strongly in all of us who can vote to do so, and that has meaning. What would you say to that, as well as folks in general, whether their person is running unopposed or not, just feel like the system is so entrenched, it's difficult to make changes, why vote? What would you say to that?
Well, the first thing is I think it depends on the district and the person, right? So I got into my seat. I was seen as a long shot. When I first talked about being a state senator, I think people didn't take me seriously. But you know what? I took my story seriously, and I talked about my background, and I talked about my record of activism, and that prevailed. So I don't have an opponent in the general election, but I think it's still really strong. I mean, it's still really important for people to show up and vote because it sends a message, right? If this person is representing me and representing my community, is walking the walk, and that's something that I want to get behind. I had 31,000 people vote for me in a primary, and I took that to heart. I said, these are 31,000 people that are happy to have me representing them, and feel like it's about time, right? The fierce urgency of now that we have somebody that can speak to the broad spectrum of this community and has literally hit the ground running, right? 16 bills passed. And the first term is, not typical for a state legislator. And so I think that the big support that I've gotten, even without an opponent, is I think speaks to that. In other districts, I think it's kind of case by case. It's always important for the people to vote. But I get it, right? Like I get when someone says so-and-so's been in office for, a long time, right? And they never have an opponent. That's a different scenario, right? I think it then becomes a situation where I challenge the constituents to look at the people that serve them and look at their record and say, is this somebody that I should keep supporting term and term again? Or are there other people like newer energy, fresher faces that should consider, running for office? So, but, I just got here. I've been in office for 18 months. I think me not having a Republican opponent probably speaks to the, prolific output that, I've brought into this role. And the robust representation of all people, especially those that typically have been disenfranchised and have just simply not been reflected or listened to or valued or respected in local government.
Thank you, Senator Mike. And why don't you close us out? Well, do you have any kind of words of encouragement for us, like during these very challenging, chaotic times, not only in our city and state, but in the country? It'd be great to hear them from you.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I think in 2022, it's hard to read the news, right? I mean, there's so many, it's literally gotten to a point now where it's just crazy, right? I mean, the people that are running for office and winning, and the things they're saying and the kind of bills they're introducing and different. I mean, I was just reading an article in the New Yorker about what's happening in Ohio with how far to the right that they've drifted. The words of encouragement I would give is that at the same time that we've seen all this kind of, right wing sort of pushback and crazier, more homophobic, more racist people running for office, we're also seeing people like me and other younger, fresher faces that we've never seen in power before, right? Alaska is now in a situation where they may be sending the first Native American from Alaska to Congress over Sarah Palin, right, who ran as John McCain's running mate in 2008. So we've seen Native Americans elected to Congress. We've seen two Black gay men elected to Congress in the last 2 years. We've seen a first transgender person elected to office in Illinois. We've seen transgender people elected to state legislatures in states like Colorado. So we are seeing more representation. And I think that for me is the point of light, that we still are able to claim our seat and not there is somebody, nobody's darling, as my friend Renata Robinson would say. We're actually getting stuff done. We're passing. Yeah. Right. We didn't come to play. We come in there and we're going to be a force to be reckoned with. We're not here to anybody's ring because too many people are not here, right? I say, I as a Black gay man, to my right is somebody that didn't make it. To my left is somebody that still isn't out of the closet. And behind me is somebody that died because they were not well served by the healthcare system. So I don't have time to play around. And I think that's what folks should be thinking about. And that's, I think that's well worth the fight, at least for another decade for the community. And on that note, I also, in terms of a long-term conversation, I want to make sure your listeners, I want to make an ask that you follow me on social media so you can see more of what I've been working on. I'm at Senator Mike Simmons on Instagram, and then I'm at Senator Mike Simmons on Facebook, and then I'm also or just Mike Simmons on Facebook, and then I'm on Twitter at Mike Simmons Shy. So follow all my channels because, like Kelly said, I put a lot of stuff out there. And I think it's important for people to get a sense for like not just the interview, but like what is a Black gay senator up to on a week-to-week basis, and what does this mean for the broader community?
my gosh, it doesn't get any better than that. And I just want to thank you so much for your time, Senator Mike. I'm really proud of you. Please keep up the great work and being a man of the people. I love you dearly. Love you dearly. And thanks everyone for tuning in. This is exciting. Like, this is our first Politics at the Kitchen Table podcast, and I'm looking forward to the next one. And many thanks again to the audience for your great questions, and to Anna Deshawn and E3 Radio. Bye.
Yeah, Mike Simmons. Take care.
Meeting up with the homies was a little different this year, but we still found a way to make it work.
Y'all heard, y'all hoes, you could talk. You talking all this shit, but let me see if you could walk.
There's so much media being made by our community that it can be a little overwhelming to find something new to get into. But what if there was a place where you can find curated podcasts, music, and other media by BIPOC and QTPOC creators? The Cube is an all-in-one platform where you can find the best media by BIPOC and QTPOC creators right at your fingertips. It's loaded with features for artists and audiences, like being able to tip your favorite creators or being able to participate in revenue share when you publish on the platform. We've come a long way in developing this app, and we need your help to get us past the finish line. If you want quality, curated content and a community just for us, support The Cube.